Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. We've got a fantastic show on the way. But first, I just want to say thanks to NordVPN, our sponsors here at the Everything is Black and White podcast, who without none of this would be possible. And we've teamed up with them to offer our listeners and viewers an exclusive offer. You can click the link in the podcast description box or go to nordvpn.com/tune to sign up and save your pennies on a plan. It is well worth your time to sign up. You are secure, you are safe, and you're supporting the podcast. Why sign up? I hear you ask. Well, there are a host of benefits. For me, it is the value for money because one subscription can be used across 10 devices. That's your work phone, your personal phone, your tablet, what have you. 10 devices, one subscription. I mean, that is the definition of value for money. The other thing I love about it as well is the way that it keeps your details safe and secure when browsing on public Wi-Fi. So if you're on the bus, the train, you're in a cafe and you're connected to their Wi-Fi, there is always the risk that your details could be compromised. That's your bank details, your passwords, and a load of other stuff as well. But with Nord, you are safe and you are secure. And that for me means a heck of a lot. And look, if you're going abroad as well and you're missing your home comforts and you want to keep with it with all your UK streaming services, then you can click the location back to the UK and make sure you never miss your favorite program. What is not to love about it? It's absolutely fantastic. Very simple to get on board. You download the app, you sign up, and away you go. You're keeping yourself safe, you're keeping yourself secure, and you're supporting the podcast at the same time. And another benefit, and I've already mentioned three, and there are a host of other things to mention as well if we had the time. But the final thing I'm going to mention is a 30-day money back guarantee. So it's literally no risk. If you don't like it, get your money back. But you will like it because it's a superb app to have on your phone. Keeps you safe, keeps you secure. And once again, you're supporting the podcast. So click the link or go to nordvpn.com/tune to take advantage of an exclusive offer for our listeners and viewers of the Everything is Black and White podcast. Roll the titles. Hello and welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the match preview with me, Andrew Musgrove, and John Gibson. Newcastle welcome Wolves to St James's Park for a good old-fashioned 3:00 kickoff on Saturday. There is plenty to talk about, some selection dilemmas, fairly how to dive into. John, welcome back to the show. How are you keeping? You well?
I'm well, and I'm looking forward to the resumption of Premier League hostilities after the international break, which always seems a little bit false to me. We'll get back to the real stuff. The dust has settled down. We've had the transfer window closed. We know where we are now, and we're ready to go.
Yes, indeed. And people know I'm not a big fan of the international break at all, especially after just a few games of the new season. It's crazy. However, given that we're having a few more players in the England squad these days, John, I mean, admittedly, I haven't watched any of the games, but I'm reading the reports and keeping a little bit of a close eye on Dan Burn and Tino Livramento, Anthony Gordon. Does it make the international break a little bit more bearable now we've got a vested interest?
Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, I watched the England games simply because we were involved in the England games. And I'm glad I did against Serbia because I thought Livramento playing on his wrong side, if he's got a wrong side, he's so at home on either side, was what he always is, a Rolls Royce, a wonderful player. I mean, he is somebody to treasure and make certain he doesn't go out the door. Livramento was terrific. I thought Gordon started terrific, faded a little bit, and maybe lack of games, own fault, of course, but lack of games was the reason for that. But he looked lively once again. Big Dan didn't play, and horses for courses, I didn't think he would. The other games suited Dan more than this one. But both our lads, I thought, were terrific and more important than anything, from our point of view, came through without any injuries. And I was particularly pleased, Andrew, that Wissa got 2 games under his belt, lasted over an hour having started, didn't show any signs of rust, although obviously an hour and a half was going to be too much, and scored in both games. That is a massive plus for us.
Certainly is, because all things being well, he will be the man to start against Wolves on Saturday, and we'll get more into that as the show goes on. But Sandro Tonali as well, getting on the score sheet. And
Absolutely,
once
the
again,
winner in the last minute, and I mean, quite incredible. But we know what he is. He's just a quality act.
yeah, certainly so. And I was just going to say, thankfully, coming through the international break without any injury as well, because we know against Leeds, he admitted he wasn't fully fit, but
Yeah.
wanted to play. He's gone away with Italy, played, well, got on the score sheet, and then he heads back to Tyneside, ready for Saturday's game against Wolves. And look, John, the season hasn't gone particularly to plan so far. 2 points from the opening 3 games. A lot of people are saying the season starts now because they've got
Yeah.
the 2 strikers in, the Isak saga's done and dusted. And I can totally understand that sentiment. But, when we get down to the bare bones of it, this is a game that Newcastle United need to be winning, because you want to get that first win over the line. And secondly, it's against a team that you should be beating, really.
Oh yeah, I mean, if there's such a thing as the perfect fixture for when you're coming out of a catastrophic period, you've had 3 games, you've won none of them, you've had your ace centre forward leave, you've had 5 players come in, they've just been flying in every direction. Now we're starting, you look at the fixture list, we've got 4 of the next 5 at home, not in the league, in all competitions. And I think we've got something like 7 out of the next 10 at home in all competitions, League Cup, Champions League, and Premier League. That is a real platform for us to kick on. And if we're looking to kick on, then you want Wolves at home, don't you? They've lost all 3 games. I mean, to me, they might well break the mold of the promoted 3 automatically going back down on block. They could be one of the 3 teams to go down. So you want a game at home like Wolves, especially when you've got Barca, the glamour Champions League match to come, possibly the glamour match of the whole season in the Champions League. Barca here. And the build up to that, you want to get a nice victory over Wolves and then go into Barca. But at the moment, we can't think of Barca because Wolves is so important because, 2 points out of 9 is nowhere near good enough by Newcastle standards. We know why that happened. No centre forward. We've now got 2 centre forwards. So let's go and do the business against Wolves that we ought to do, because there was encouragement in those 3 games, Andrew. It wasn't all doom and gloom. We looked a good side, but without the cutting edge. Now we hope we've got the cutting edge to go with the good side. And Wolves must be put to the book.
Yeah, I think that's probably the important thing, isn't it? That we had an excuse for those first 3 games because we didn't
Yeah.
have an out-and-out striker, which I thought actually allowed the likes of Alanga and Barnes and Gordon a little bit off the hook slightly, because at the end of the day, you're in those positions and you should be scoring goals. But nonetheless, we did have an excuse. But now we don't. You have 2 strikers to choose from, yes. One won't be match fit, and the other one probably won't be ready to start because it's a new experience for him in Nick Voltemade. But nonetheless, you have 2 quality strikers who, should be putting these chances away. I think Alanga and Barnes will be rubbing their hands at the prospect of actually having a target man to aim for in the box, whether it be kind of a poacher like Wissa or someone like Voltemade, who's a totally different style of player to Wissa. They've got someone to aim for now. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, hopefully, either one or maybe both getting on the score sheet. But you mentioned Wolves first, John. It's interesting because they finished the season really strongly. And obviously they've lost some key players. They lost their left back to Man City and Matheus Cunha to Manchester United, and very nearly lost Strand Larson to Newcastle United. That had happened a few weeks earlier in the window. Do you think last season was maybe kind of an extended new manager bounce, and we're now seeing the real Wolves in terms of obviously those first 3 games being in defeat?
Yes, I think we see. I know that the Wolves supporters are concerned. They haven't bought anybody from midfield. They've got a glaring weakness there. They've lost their quality players. They're on a bit of a downer. It's going to be hard to get out of that. They'll be desperately looking at the 3 clubs that come up and saying, will you please go back down and save our bacon for us? They haven't had a good transfer window. I suggested we have, despite losing Isaac, we've had a good transfer window. And I would fully expect us to get the 3 points, but we've got to earn them. They won't be given to us automatically. We won't just have to turn up and an hour and a half later we're looking a lot better in the league table. These points have got to be earned, and if we don't go about it the right way, we could find ourselves scratching around in the last 20 minutes, hopefully trying to get the final breakthrough. I don't think that'll happen. I'm very confident that we'll go off on the front foot. We will be ready for this. The players that stuck so manfully by us during those 3 games when we didn't have a centre forward, he'll see that that's been remedied. He'll see that Newcastle have bought 5 players in the transfer window, not all necessarily on the park against Wolves. Will Chow be involved? Will Ramsdale be involved? And not all on the park. But we have strengthened the squad. And with Barca coming up in the rest of the Champions League, that's very important. But first things first, which is what Eddie always says, we take one game at a time. This is the game that matters. This is the game that matters more than any other because it's the next one. And we must get 3 points. Must get 3 points. Anything less than 3 points would be a dreadful letdown and would be dreadful before we play Barca. So we can't even contemplate anything but 3 points.
I talked about excuses there in the opening 3 matches of the campaign so far. Do we have any excuses in terms of the fact that Wissa, if he does start, that'll be his first start competitively, domestically of the season? And obviously, Voldemort, if he started, it would be a new experience for him. Or are you looking at it and saying, no excuses, this has to be a win?
No, there are no excuses. These are quality players. We've spent a fortune on them, and so are the rest of them. We've spent a fortune on them, and the chips are now down. And we can't say, oh well, the wind is blown crossfield instead of goal to goal, or we got unlucky and lost the toss, or whatever. There's no excuses at all. We have put together a squad we consider to be outstanding. As far as we know at this stage, and people are still coming back from internationals as we talk, but everybody is more or less fit. We're hoping that's so with Joe Linton and the midfielder, Jacob Ramsey. We're hoping everybody's fit. And so we've got to go out and do it. It can't say, but this guy hasn't played for so long and that fella hasn't got used to the way we're playing yet. No. We've got quality players. We have more talent in the tank than Wolves got. So let's go out and do the job. There are no excuses to be had. This is a rough, tough old world. It's at the right end of the Premier League. You pay a fortune to sign these players and then you give them a fortune every week. So you've got a right to expect something at the end of the day. And we do expect something. And I think we'll get it.
Well, fingers crossed. Yeah, you talk about the injuries there. Now, on August 29th, Eddie Howe said Joelinton's scan was good, but he will miss this weekend. That was the game against Leeds. We'll hopefully get him back for the game after the international break, which, of course, is this one. Although PremierInjuries.com, which put up the injury table of all teams in the top flight, does have him ruled out for this game, but I'm assuming that's because it hasn't been updated. But obviously, we'll hear from Eddie Howe on Friday. Jacob Ramsey has been given a 75% chance by this website. His ankle swelled up at half time, said Eddie Howe. So he decided, the player, not to take any risks, but fingers crossed he will be back. If Joelinton is back, John, and he's fit and he's available to be picked, are you slotting him straight back into that midfield 3?
I think I am. Yes, I think I am, because I think the midfield 3 we were touting has been possibly the best 3 midfielders as a team together in the Premier League. So all of a sudden, why would we voluntarily leave one of them out if he was fully fit? If they're as good as that. What I'm going to find fascinating, not just this weekend, Andrew, but as the season unfolds from now on in and people get up to speed, etc., is will Eddie Howe at all be tempted to play Wissa and Voldemort in the same side? Yes, one can be starting, one on the bench. But Voldemort is not an out and out centre forward like we say is. So he can't play as a 10. He can't play a bit deeper. And it's some stage with the money paid for those two guys and the simple fact that goals win games and they are goal scorers, you're going to want them both on the pitch at the same time, I would surmise. Now then, if that happens, be it Saturday or sometime in the near future, from the start, who goes out? Does one of the three midfielders go out? Now, if Ramsey and Joe Linton were unfit, that would solve the problem if you wanted to start both Reece and Voldemort on Saturday because there's somebody out. Voldemort could be deep behind Visa and be coming onto stuff around the area. If you're not going to disturb the midfield three, you would presume normally it would be the outside right that went off. With Gordon not available, it could be that Bonds was sacrificed here and you went to Langer and the two boys in the middle. That otherwise, when Gordon's available, Gordon will play. He's the England outside left. He will play with Wisa centre forward, and then is it Voldemort or is it Ilanga out wide? Or does one of the midfielders go? I'm going to find that fascinating. And that will possibly crop up on Saturday. There's no reason why he can't start both of them. He could want to keep Voldemort on the bench, let him have a look at the way we play, start with Wisa, who's done brilliantly well for the Republic of Congo and is an out-and-out centre forward and is a goal scorer, and start with him, and then when he fades physically, bring Voldemort on. He may want to do it that way. We don't know which way Eddie will go. And until Eddie sees him in training and until Wisa comes back and he can talk to him and how the Congo thing went, physically I'm talking about, it went very well from a personal point of view. We don't know what the team will be, but you look all over the shop. Do you play Pope or Ramsdale? When does Hall come back in at left back? I'm not suggesting it's necessarily going to be against Wolves, because it's going to be sometime. For goodness sake, he was England's left back before he got hurt. So when does he come back? As well as what you do with the front three.
Yeah, well, we'll get your starting 11 in a moment, but it is interesting that the discussion and debate about Voldemort and Wissa and whether they will play together. I think against the so-called lesser sides, you may see them play together a bit more. I think when you go up against the sides battling for the top six, that's when you probably need that midfield three and that enforcement of Joe Linton. But I mean, you take Joe Linton out of Newcastle side against any opposition, it's going to be a big loss. And if you do it, then the person you replace them with has to produce the goods. I mean, you know, there was a chance you could see them on Saturday, and what Eddie Howe might prefer to do is to keep Joe Linton on the bench ahead of Thursday's game against Barcelona, when you're going to need a bit more of that brutality in the middle of the park, and the midfield battle might be a bit more crucial, and you'll be chasing the game a lot more. Whereas on Saturday, you expect Newcastle to be in control of that game, and that's maybe where Voldemort and Wissa come into their own. You know, if this game was potentially further down the line, then yeah, with it being so close to the window ending and the players settling and what have you, there's something in my head that says maybe Eddie won't play them together, and B, won't rip up the tried and tested formation that he sticks with, just simply because, you know, it's so close to them arriving and are they settled and have they got used to their teammates. I mean, Voldemort trained with his teammates for the first time, I think it was on Tuesday, and you saw him getting settled, and he was with Fabian Schär and Malek Chiao, his fellow countrymen and what have you. And look, it'll not take him long to settle. He's got, like we say, fellow countrymen there with him, people who speak the same language. I think he'll settle pretty sharpish. It's just how he gets used to the experience of the Premier League, but then you only get that by playing in competitive games. So it's one of those, it's going to be fascinating, isn't it?
The interesting thing as well, and that's what makes the team sheet's going to be as interesting as anything. The hour and a quarter before the kickoff is going to be as fascinating as the match itself. And throwing another sort of bomb into the whole equation, we've got to remember with all these signings, he spent a lot of money on Ramsey. And if Joe Linton doesn't play, he may decide, hey, wait a minute, I've paid a lot of money for Ramsey. Ramsey knows the Premier League, as Wissa does. So you start with Wissa up front and you play Ramsey if Joe Linton doesn't make it. I mean, there's that possibility as well as Voldemort going with Wissa. I mean, you know, Ramsey has been big dough and was a great target of the manager for quite a while. He'll not be lightly dismissed from being in the side either.
No. And you know what the great thing is, John, is that we are actually talking about depth within the squad. There are
Absolutely
options.
right. Absolutely right. When did we last talk about that? Yeah, it's excellent to have all these different possibilities. We never had a challenge to Pope, and we now have with Ramsdale. We never had a challenge to Shaw, and Shaw's going to produce that. Ramsey's going to want to get in the side. Voldemort's going to want to get in the side. Elanga, we're forgetting because he's played in 3, is still a new face to us. And there's Murphy there who will be knocking on the door and saying, don't forget me, boss. I was one of your top men last season. I'm the great assist king. And if you've got a centre forward, I can assist him. And that is wonderful because it means that the bench becomes important where it used to be a kindergarten and 2 goalkeepers. Now it can have some impact, and it means that over these regular games where we go this weekend Wolves, then we go Thursday Barcelona and Sunday Bournemouth, some of the load can be spread. Although it's very difficult to spread it, of course, isn't it, Andrew? Because you want to win your 2 Premier League games because we're playing catch-up, and Barca's a given. You play your best side against Barca.
Yeah, you want that momentum that we always talk about, don't you? Look, we're talking about up front. We haven't even talked about Willisula, obviously. One of 2 men to have scored this season for Newcastle United, and he'll be flying high. Wish I could even maybe play out on the left if for whatever reason, you know, Eddie Howe doesn't fancy Harvey Barnes, which I don't think will happen, but these are the options that we are talking about, and it's absolutely fantastic to see. On the midfield 3 as well, you know, Bruno went away with Brazil. He got a goal. Admittedly, it was a tap in that Uri could have scored, but nonetheless, it was a goal, and he'll be coming back to Newcastle in great spirits. And after that performance against Liverpool at St James's Park, where it was arguably the best I've seen of him, he'll be looking to build on that. And obviously, as captain, he'll be wanting to get Newcastle that first win of the season.
Yeah, without a shadow of doubt. Ironically, we're talking about getting that goal for Brazil, which he did. He gave away the penalty when they lost 1-0 to Bolivia last night, which probably knocked him back a little bit. But that was at altitude and was a right old do. Yes, he'll be looking to drive us on, and he played well for us last time. He's essential to the side. He sets the pattern of caring. And isn't that a word we love at the moment? Caring, people that care about Newcastle United. And he epitomizes that. And you know what? We've talked about all the possibilities, and there's almost a possibility in every position. If you take the goalkeeping 2 and you take Hall to come back at every stage, there's almost a question mark over every position, which for the most positive of reasons. But you know what? Whatever team Eddie puts out should be capable of beating Wolves. If they play the way they ought to play, if they show the intensity, the commitment, and the togetherness that we showed in the 3 games that have gone, especially the first 2 of those 3, and we put a sharpness in the box on top of that, which is why we spent money on the 2 Ws, then we will be okay.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Wolves is a fascinating opposition because they have got obviously talented players. I mean, Newcastle wanted Strand Larson. He is a goal scorer, and it's going to be a fascinating battle if he starts between either him and Cher or him and Dan Burn. They have got other players that we need to watch out for, and it's going to be a big test. And the other thing as well, if I remember correctly, the last time we played Wolves, I've said here that we expect Newcastle to have a lot of the ball, but if my memory serves me correct, Newcastle actually sat deep in that game and absorbed the pressure and then won the game 3-0. And then strangely, the next game was Chelsea, and Eddie Howe decided not to deploy the same tactics and we ended up getting beat. But it just shows you, like, we can sit here and say the expectation is Newcastle will have control, but you just don't know how Eddie Howe will approach the game. And we also talk about options and the changes he could make. He might make the changes we would make. Knowing Eddie Howe, it'll be the same starting 11 that started against Leeds. That's just Eddie Howe. But that being said, John, let's run through your starting 11. This is what you would do.
I was going to, by the way, the one thing where it won't be the same side as played against Leeds is at centre forward, my old friend. That's where it would be. But yes, I know exactly what you say. The side I think Newcastle will field, and this is second guessing, not necessarily my side. I think he'll stick with Pope. I don't think he'll bring Ramsdale in at this stage, because you would destroy Pope, and Ramsdale's moment's going to come. There's absolutely no question. When you look at 7 home games out of 10, and they all come boom, 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 3 a week virtually, he's going to play. I think Pope will play. I think it'll be the usual back four. I think he'll keep Trips. The 2 centre halves are obvious. He's not going to start Chow yet, and Livermento's England's left back, for goodness sake. Never mind Newcastle United's. So I would expect the back four to be the back four. He always loves horses for courses, and if Joe Linton's fit, I think he'll go Bruno Tonali, Joe Linton, and I think he'd then go Elanga, Wissa, and Bonds up front, and bring Woltemade on.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually just written that team down just right there. And the other thing I've written down is NordVPN, because they sponsor the show, and you guys need to be clicking the link in the podcast description box to get an exclusive offer on your NordVPN plan. No risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. I've got it on my phone. It gives me that element of security when I'm on the train heading into work, because it protects you on public Wi-Fi. So little risk of your details getting stolen by potential hackers and scammers. So there is a discounted offer in the podcast description box. Support the podcast and keep yourself nice and secure. But yes, John, I do think that will be the starting 11 on Saturday. He's not a man that likes to make many changes. And even though I do think the Barcelona game could have some sort of impact, we know Eddie Howe. He is about the game right in front of him. He doesn't like to think about the game after as much as we potentially do. If Joe Linton's 85% fit, do you keep him on the bench and save him for Barca? That's what I would do. But what would Eddie Howe do? You'll probably deploy him for the first hour or so to win that midfield battle. Eddie Howe as well, then he's right. He works with these players day in, day out. But let us know in the comments your thoughts. What will the starting 11 be? It is fascinating, and it's great to be able to have these conversations and not actually know for certain who's going to start up front, who's going to start in midfield, or really all over the park. It's great to be in that position. Would you like some stats, John? I know you're a fan of stats, right?
Go on, mate.
So Newcastle have lost just 2 of their 20 Premier League matches against Wolves. They've won 7, drawn 11, a defeat percentage of just 10%. They're lowest against any side they've faced at least 20 times in the competition. Wolves have won just 1 of the last 22 away top-flight visits to Newcastle, winning 2-1 back in 2018 under Nuno Espirito Santo. In 43 away games at the Magpies in the top division, Wolves have just 2 clean sheets, with those coming in 1899 and 1974, and John was there at both of those games. Newcastle have scored in all 20 Premier League games against Wolves. Only Arsenal versus West Brom and Arsenal versus Wolves have played more games against one opponent and scored in each game in the competition's history. However, Newcastle are winless in 5 Premier League games, last going 6 without a win in September 2022. The Magpies have lost both the last 2 league games at St James's Park, last losing 3 in February 2021. And Wolves, as we've said, have lost all 3 of their Premier League games this season and could lose each of their opening 4 games of a league campaign for the very first time in their history, with this their 127th season in the Football League /top flight. So some stats there to get into. I mean, this game is traditionally finished 1-1, or in a draw at least, but Newcastle United have got a good record against Wolves, previously scoring 6 goals in the last 2 games at St James's Park and then winning 2-1 on the road last September. So stats are in their favour, the atmosphere, the need. I know Wolves need to win, but Newcastle do as well. It's got to be a win, right?
Yeah, of course it has. I mean, the stats are wonderful to tell, and well done you. You brought out a load of stats there. It absolutely inundated me, like pouring treacle over my head. But I mean, all the stats seem to indicate Newcastle win. And you know what? It doesn't matter a jot. Newcastle win because of the better team now. They'll be the better team on Saturday than Wolves. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. It doesn't matter about when Bert Williams and Billy Wright played for them in the 50s and Jackie Milburn was marauding at centre forward. It matters what Wissa's going to do and if Bruno's going to get a grip of the midfield and whether Burns going to lock the door at the back. That's what matters. And we are man for man a better side than them. And when we talked about the team and spreading the load, etc., the wonderful thing is if it gets to 70 minutes, we either want to kill the game off or make certain we'll win it, or actually, heaven forbid, have to go on and win it because they've survived. You look at the options on the bench after the team we picked. When you look at Walter Marder, you look at Murphy, you look at Ramsey, you look at all the changes that you could possibly make, and he's got real options there, and that is a terrific thing. And where you were saying, looking, we've got Barca to come. Maybe he's got to think, if somebody's not quite fit, he isn't in that position for this game because 2 points out of 6. He's got to win this one. Never mind Barca. If he doesn't win this one, Barca looks a bit dodgy, doesn't it? You've got to win this one first. So he's got to pick his strongest side to win this game. Then worry about Barca. Well, sure, if we're 3-0 up and we get to 70 minutes, 75 minutes, you can start bringing the Joe Lintons off. Wissa would come off because he's not going to play 90 minutes. That's for certain. Valdemar would go on. You would look at Murphy. You would look at all the other options that's available. And you've got to remember that talking about spreading the load, we can play Anthony Gordon against Barca. So, he comes back in against Barca. So there's a switch up front that'll be very effective, we hope, against a team like Barcelona. And he'll be raring to go in that. So, it's very, very interesting, and I'm very optimistic. At this given moment, I can't see anything but a win. And I know I frighten myself somewhat saying that because I should know through history that you never say that when you're following Newcastle United. But I like to think Newcastle these days are slightly different than the pre-Saudi, pre-Eddie Howe days.
Yeah, they are. And what gives me confidence that it isn't misplaced prediction of a win is that there were so many good signs in those opening 3 games. And it goes back to the point, if it had a centre forward, then Newcastle would have won at least 2 of those games. The Liverpool one and Aston Villa spring to mind. So I'm taking the shoots of optimism into Saturday, and that's why they will win, because they did play reasonably well, especially against Villa and Liverpool, and we left thinking should really be 6 points against Leeds. It was a bit of a mismatch with the formation and setup and what have you, but nonetheless, crucial point there. But it needs to be built upon, and they will win on Saturday. Just before we sign off, John, just want to ask you about Johan Wissa taking the number 9 shirt. Huge responsibility on the man's shoulders, but he's wanted that shirt for, it seems, an eternity, ever since this deal was first put to him. That's a sign of courage, isn't it? Good test of character. You'll not be naive to every man who's gone before him. Some haven't lived up to the expectations. Some certainly have. What's your thoughts on it?
I'm delighted at his attitude. He should want the shirt. And why? Because if he has the shirt, he's halfway to being a legend, because the number 9, you've got to wear the number 9 to become a number 9 legend. And he's got the shirt, so go and get the goals and you could become a legend. This late in your career, and I'm only saying that because he's 29, he's still on the right side, but this late in your career, you can become a superstar, not just a superstar. His attitude is terrific, that he wants the shirt. He is a clever footballer that's not just a sniffer of goals. He knows where the ball's going to drop. He'll be in the right place in the right time in the penalty area. But he's not just a sniffer. He can play as well. And he can link play and he can do the things that's necessary to be a good number 9 and to be a number 9 that's impressed here. And the crowd will be 300% with him, by the way, because he's the centre forward that wants to be here, as opposed to anyone else that I'm not going to talk about because I'm enjoying myself. So, let Wissa go out and do the job. And let Voldemorti, who, has taken a bit of punishment in the press in Germany, didn't play too well in the 2 games. People telling him he's done wrong to come to Newcastle. He should have stayed in the Bundesliga and he should have gone to Bayern Munich. It's all sour grapes. The kid's got wonderful skills. He can play. He's very deceptive for a big man. He's clever. He's got a football brain. Take no notice of it, Nick. We'll love you here. Just come here and do the business, and you'll feel the love. My thing on Saturday would be for them both to score. We set the score and then go for a nice rest in the afternoon, preparing for Barcelona, because by Jove, hasn't he wanted to play in the Champions League? And Voldemorti comes on and gets the final cherry on top of the cake, if you like. That would be a perfect Saturday for every Geordie possible, that the 2 W's actually got on the score sheet.
Certainly would be. So me and John both going for victory for Newcastle against Wolves on Saturday. Do let us know in the comments your thoughts. If you're on social media, on X, you can get in touch with me as well at AD Musgrove, and I'll get back to you. You can let me know your thoughts on anything that me and John have discussed today. And if you've got any questions to put to John next week ahead of the Barcelona game, do let us know. The email address is the AIBWpodcast@reachplc.com. If you're on YouTube, do it thumbs up, do it subscribe to the channel and get into the comments. If you're listening on the audio only platform, thank you as always. Leave us a rating and review. Make sure you share the pod across social media with your friends and family as well. And make sure you take advantage of that NordVPN special offer for our listeners and viewers of the Everything's Black and White podcast. Like I say, stay safe, secure, and support the podcast at the same time. And for myself and John, we'll be back next week to look ahead to Newcastle United versus Barcelona in the Champions League.